Welcome to the channel and welcome to today's run through of all the latest Manchester United news and transfer updates, keeping you right up to date with everything. I'm Jamie. Before we get into it, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Let's jump straight into it. So let's kick off with the latest regarding Bryan Mbeumo, because there's been a couple of interesting updates over the last 24 hours that shed a little bit of light on the situation and why we are at the sort of standoff that we are regarding that deal. So Manchester United remain in talks for Bryan Mbeumo, but will not be panicked into paying over the odds. 3 weeks ago, United believed they were close to reaching an agreement for Mbeumo, with Brentford sources even suggesting a medical was expected to take place. However, the two Premier League clubs are still haggling over the amount of money to be paid up front. Brentford are wanting a guarantee of at least £62.5 million. The Red Devils paid for Cunha and add-ons, pushing the overall package to in excess of £65 million. Ideally, Man United want to have Mbeumo signed in time for their upcoming pre-season tour of the US, which they are due to depart for next Tuesday. Now, that came from Alex Crook. Now, Alex Crook, I would say take with a pinch of salt, because he's can be a little bit hit and miss. But interesting, though, that came out saying that 3 weeks ago, we believed that we were close to reaching an agreement, with Brentford sources suggesting a medical was expecting to take place. Now, the reason that's important, because Alex Crook and Ben Jacobs and a few others were all bringing the news out regarding the medicals booked, a medical this week and stuff. And going off of that report, that's obviously what they were being told by Brentford sources, was that the medical, that even Brentford side expected that deal to be done and expected Mbeumo to be doing a medical at that particular point in time. So I don't think that necessarily the reports were incorrect. They just jumped the gun a little bit. Now, interestingly, though, Jamie Jackson, who is a credible source, links with the club and in the press conferences and stuff, said that at the end of June, Ratcliffe and Wilcox believed a £65 million package would land in Mbeumo. Brentford also privately indicated a medical was expected imminently. So again, that corroborates with the stories that we had around a medical being booked, because the expectation was that Brentford were indicating that a medical was due. United's push to sign him has stalled after Brentford raised their valuation to closer to £70 million, with Sir Jim intent on not being pushed into paying more than his club's £65 million valuation. So reading between the lines then on that report, so obviously we had David Ornstein the other day drop the bomber that they're still, miles apart in terms of valuation. And that explains why, because the original negotiations, by the sounds of things, were for like the 62 or the 65 million pounds, going off of what Jamie Jackson's saying there, which we were probably closer to going for bidding. And then when we put in the second bid, all of a sudden Brentford have moved the goalposts and said, no, actually, now we want £70 million, and that's why we're at this stalemate and why we're at this impasse, because, we're getting told one price, 65 million, and with the add-ons and stuff, and we were negotiating that, and then we made a bid, they've rejected it, and then they've come back and said, actually, no, we want £70 million as well. And where do we go from here? What do we do? Because, it's one of these where it might be a case of who blinks first, and maybe that's why we are just waiting to see, hopefully, if Mbeumo can do something from his end, or his agent can put the pressure on Brentford to say, hold on, you've moved the goalposts. That's not fair for my client because he wants this move. Who knows? But it seems like we're being stubborn with our valuation, and rightly so, though, as well. I think, in my opinion, I think that if we're told one price and then we bid close to that price and start working on a deal around that fee, and then all of a sudden, after 4 weeks of negotiations before we put in that second bid, they then move the goalpost to say, no, actually, we want 70. Who's to suggest if we start bidding closer to 70 that they move the goalposts again? And you can't be on like that. You can't just keep bidding and bidding and bidding and bidding until you get a deal. You need to know, roughly the context of the deal and stuff. So I don't know where we'll go from here, but give us your thoughts on that in the comments below. Graham Bailey said that Manchester United are telling Mbeumo they still fully expect him to be on their pre-season tour, and that they are confident that they will reach an agreement with Brentford. So again, time is ticking, though, on this deal to get him on the to fly out. I mean, he could still fly out on the tour, I suppose, but it's not ideal. It's not ideal for the player. It's not ideal for, obviously, Ruben Amorim and the rest of the team to get used to playing with Mbeumo. Fabrizio Romano said that having Bryan Mbeumo for the pre-season tour has been the mission and efforts are being made to make it happen before then. His wait for United gives hope to the club about his commitment. They remain optimistic. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. Obviously, we've got a game on Saturday as well. That's going to be good. I can't wait to watch the first pre-season game because it's felt like it's been a while since any football, and sick of talking about the transfer rumours and stuff. Be nice to actually talk about the game for once over the weekend, but then obviously we fly out, I think, to the States next Tuesday, so we'll have to wait and see what happens over the next couple of days. Could be a frantic couple of days going off of some of the rest of the reports, but give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below. Now, Ollie Watkins would be open to joining Manchester United this summer if they made an offer for him. The belief is the England striker would be interested in making a switch to Old Trafford this summer if a move became a realistic option. Now, that came from Dean Jones via Give Me Sport. Dean Jones, I think, is a decent source or decent journalist when it comes to United as well, suggesting that Ollie Watkins would be open to a move to Manchester United if we make an offer for him. Obviously, at the moment, we don't know what's going on with the striker situation. We're getting links with Nicholas Jackson, Ollie Watkins. I think it's still a realistic name. Mateta, Romano said that United considered Mateta as one of the options at the start of the window, but never proceeded. For the striker position, they have 3 to 4 options, but it will depend on how much they can spend as well as sales. So we're still working on the budget. There's some Garnacho news that we'll go through in a second. I still like the idea of some sort of deal, maybe with Watkins and Garnacho, potentially if we're struggling to sell Garnacho, and we'll go through all of that in it and with the Garnacho news in a second. But I like Ollie Watkins. I think out of all the strikers, personally, I would be going for Ollie Watkins now as my personal number one option. But again, we need to wait and see what the club do, because we've had the links with, like I said, Nicholas Jackson and maybe Mateta, now that Palace's situation is a bit unclear with the Europa League and stuff. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But give us your thoughts on that in the comments below. Now, there's been a few links to a couple of midfielders, which we'll go through next. So Man United are set to battle Liverpool for the signing of Andre from Wolves this summer. It has been claimed the Brazilian 24 moved to the West Midlands in a £15 million deal from Fluminense in August 2024. I remember that. I remember we were linked with Andre as well, and I remember saying that would have been a really good deal, because he's a really good player. £15 million. However, after less than 12 months at Molineux, Andre could be on the move again. Corriere dello Sport just have reported that United, Liverpool and Juventus are interested in the 5'9" midfielder. It's added that Andre could be available for as little as £30 million. Now, that came from a report. I read it in the Manchester Evening News. Obviously came from Corriere dello Sport, as it reported in there as well. That feels a little bit to me when I always hear United linked with other clubs. It's probably Juventus are interested in him, but somebody's putting out United's name to generate interest or generate views and stuff. But and I don't know if we've got £30 million to spend on a midfielder after because we're going to have to sell to buy after either Mbeumo, or if we don't get Mbeumo, maybe we pivot for a striker. Maybe you use that money to go for Watkins, for example. Anything beyond that, we're going to have to sell players. So I don't know. I think 30 million might be a little bit out of our price range. But give us your thoughts on Andre. I think he's a good player, actually. I rate that idea. I think he wouldn't be a bad shout anyway, I think, to bring in the midfield, but wouldn't be necessarily my number one options, and I'm not exactly getting excited about the idea of it, but I think he would be a decent shout to bring in. Premier League proven, good age. I think he'd be a good shout for £30 million, not the worst idea I've heard of. But give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments. Now, the other player that I actually do like the idea of is Tolisso. So Tolisso is a player who has been offered to Manchester United this summer. He is one of several players who have been offered to the Manchester club in recent weeks. So that came from Fabrizio Romano, sort of confirming that the links with Tolisso that we've been bringing you over the last couple of days might have some legs in it, whether it's been mischievous from the previous reports from the French outlets, suggesting United were looking at Tolisso. According to Romano, maybe it's the opposite way round, where Tolisso has been offered to Manchester United this summer as well. It's less than £9 million, I think the fee was yesterday, going off the report as well. I like the idea of this more than Andre, I think, just purely because of the price, because if we're in a situation where, but money's tight and we need a straight, like that reduced cost could have been getting a goalkeeper, for example. So I like the idea of Tolisso. The more I think about it, the more I think it wouldn't be a bad shout. But we'll have to wait and see. I'd want to see a bit more credibility and a little bit more, a little bit more noise around whether whether the interest is actually genuine or not. Because going off of Romano there, it sounds like maybe his agents offered him to United. Maybe we're thinking about it though. If we can get the budget and get the funds in or get some exits done, then maybe that wouldn't be, not the worst option in the world. But give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below. Now, obviously, as I mentioned there, a lot of the reports, or a lot of the transfer window, the rest of the transfer window is going to be very, very heavily reliant on exits. So let's go through all the latest there, because there's actually been a couple of significant updates regarding Sancho, Garnacho, and everything like that. So we'll run through the exit noise now. So bear with me. So Aston Villa are among the clubs weighing up a move for Alejandro Garnacho. Chelsea and Tottenham have been monitoring Garnacho's deteriorating situation at Old Trafford, and Villa are understood to have registered their interest. He was previously valued at around £70 million, but it's unlikely clubs will be prepared to offer that much now, considering his fractious fallout with United. Now, that came from Chris Wheeler, suggesting that Aston Villa are one of the clubs interested in Garnacho, as well as Chelsea. We know that. Tottenham would be an interesting shout as well, but that's where, can we do something if Villa want Garnacho? Can we do a deal with Watkins, for example, where we take Watkins, they buy Garnacho? I like the idea of doing something like that, because the reality is Garnacho's going. So we might as well get either the most money that we can. But again, going off Chris Wheeler's report, we're asking for 70, but clubs are reluctant to pay that because of the situation regarding him. They know we want to sell. We've weakened our hand in terms of our bargaining power when it comes to certain players. I think Garnacho is one of them. So can we get a better deal? Can we get a discount on Watkins, or can we do something with that? I like the idea of doing that, but I don't know if it's going to be possible or not. We'll have to wait and see how that picks up, and that's just a theory that I would like to see. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens regarding that situation. Pete Hall, though, said that Alejandro Garnacho was set to join Napoli swiftly after last season's disappointing performance, with Napoli sporting director Giovanni Manna meeting Manchester United officials in early June, but no deal has been finalised. So that's interesting, that from Pete Hall, suggesting that Garnacho was set to join Napoli, but something's changed, whether it's the asking price, Napoli walking away. Garnacho, I think, is probably rejected, going off of the reports, because the reports are he wants to stay in the Premier League. So maybe there was some sort of deal lined up early, and there's been a change of heart or change in circumstances. But for whatever reason, that deal's not gone through, because the belief is Garnacho does want to stay in the Premier League, and that's and that's where we are at the moment regarding the situation. But that would have been interesting, because obviously Garnacho was heavily linked with Napoli in January as well. So we'll wait to see how that plays out, or whether they come back in. I think they've moved on now, Napoli, to be fair, so I don't think it's necessarily a viable option at the moment, but we'll keep an eye on that. But then, keeping with the Garnacho, Aston Villa are one of the Premier League clubs considering Alejandro Garnacho, as revealed last month. A left-sided attacker is a key priority for Unai Emery. Garnacho's preference is to stay in the Premier League, and he has also been on the radar of Chelsea this summer. Jackson has also been discussed by Milan and Manchester United. No formal approach from either club to date. So that came from Ben Jacobs and Alex Crook, corroborating the Aston Villa links with Alejandro Garnacho. Unai Emery's prioritising a left-sided player. Garnacho, as I mentioned, wants to stay in the Premier League. Interesting, though, with Chelsea and the Nicholas Jackson. So just as much as I would like to do potentially some sort of deal with Aston Villa and Ollie Watkins, there's the potential the club would do a similar sort of deal with Jackson and Garnacho. So again, we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. There's been a report coming from South America, though, saying that Manchester United are very close to signing Emiliano Martinez, and Alejandro Garnacho is getting closer to leaving and joining Aston Villa on loan. Martinez has agreed to join United. No concrete offer yet for Garnacho, but Villa is becoming more possible. So again, could there be some sort of deal like that? Because if we are struggling to sell Garnacho for the asking price that we want, because his price has deteriorated, would a loan and then he goes away, performs better, gets himself back in the headlines. Next summer, we can sell him for more money, potentially. They might be looking at something like that. And also then if we do a loan with Villa and then it gives us a bit of a discount maybe on Emi Martinez, who knows? But, there could be something involving Garnacho. There could be some kind of shenanigans where, we do like a swap or an exchange. It's not a swap. Swap deals don't happen in football, but, a team buys Garnacho, we buy one of their players in return, maybe at a discount or whatever as well. But interesting to know that the South American reports are saying that Man United are very close to signing Emi Martinez, so we'll have to keep an eye on that one. We'll go for the Martinez news next, but we'll just keep with Garnacho for now. On the situation, Fabrizio Romano said that the name of Garnacho remains one of the options eventually for Chelsea this summer because he has to leave Man United. He wants to stay in Premier League, and so Chelsea are aware of his situation, but as of today, still not submitting an official bid or starting any talks. So Romano confirming that the links are still there with Chelsea. And there could be a couple of possibilities, couldn't there, with Garnacho? Either we just do a straight sale and we don't do any, but we are linked with Jackson. Could there be a deal done there with Chelsea? We're linked with Martinez and Watkins from Villa. Could there be some sort of deal done with Garnacho? If we get a straight sale, it does represent homegrown profit for us though, so we will then have the funds to go out and buy players if we just sold him and didn't do like a player exchange or anything. But there are a few options potentially with Garnacho, but we just need to have to wait. We're going to have to wait and see how it all plays out. But give us your thoughts, give us your feelings, give us your shouts on the Garnacho situation in the comments below. It'll be interesting to read those later. Going back to Martinez, so Manchester United are prepared to pay around 25 million euros to sign Emi Martinez. Ruben Amorim sees the goalkeeper as a key part of his plans to reshape the team next season. Meanwhile, Aston Villa have announced the signing of 34-year-old goalkeeper Marco Bizet from French club Brest. For now, Bizet is expected to be Martinez's backup, and should the Argentine depart, he would step into the starting role. So that came from another South American source, suggesting that United are prepared to pay 25 million euros. So what's that, around 22 million pounds roughly, for Martinez, which I don't think is a bad price necessarily. But the thing with Martinez is a lot of the reports are all coming from South American journalists and South American news outlets. There's not been one UK-based journalist that I've seen at the time of recording this video suggesting that or corroborating the stories. So until we hear a little bit more credibility, I'm gonna wait and see what happens personally with the Martinez situation, because when you have everything from one side but none from the other, it feels a little bit off that, because normally you would get maybe a source from South America and then a Romano would come out, or a Laurie Whitwell or a Jamie Jackson, something of that nature, or even like a Rob Dawson, someone like that coming out confirming that this, whether it's or Ben Jacobs, I could keep going. Someone would come out and corroborate the story, but at the moment I haven't had that at the time of recording this video, which makes me a little bit skeptical around the links. But we'll just have to wait and see, because there is no smoke without fire on the other side of it as well. And we do know that Martinez has been heavily linked with us all summer, although a lot of that has been coming one way, where it's Martinez pushing for a move to United. But yeah, give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below. Now let's go through the rest of the exit news. So Manchester United are demanding £58 million for Antony, with Newcastle, Brighton, Bayern Leverkusen, RB Leipzig all interested in the Brazilian winger. Now, that's £48 million for those that work in pounds. That came from a very credible Brazilian news outlet as well, with a very large following. So I'm going to assume that that's, a decent source as well. Newcastle, they've had links with. Brighton would be interesting for him as well. We brought you the story about Leverkusen the other day. RB Leipzig would be a good shout for him as well. And I like the fact that we're getting a little bit tough with our asking price. If that's the case, £48 million for Antony, the asking price. Then, he had a really good loan season and was, one of the best players in La Liga in the end last season. So, I do think we should take a stance and maybe make it a little bit tougher, because why should we be the only club that sell our players for peanuts? So I would respect United for asking for, a decent fee for Antony, where that leaves Betis, because he wants to go to Betis by all accounts. And interestingly, I thought the Cardosa deal from Betis to Atletico had already been done, but it's still in the process of being finalised. So maybe when that deal gets over the line, maybe Betis do make a move for Antony. But Yeah, interesting that this club's it. Like I think we should accept the bids or at least have negotiations with the clubs, and then give Anthony the options. Just say, here's the options available to you. You know, choose what you want to do or want to go from there. Because the reality is, if he doesn't move, he's unlikely. He might get integrated back into the first team squad, because I don't necessarily think he's a troublemaker behind the scenes, or he's not one that, you know, that Amram would necessarily not want around the dressing room and stuff. But he's hardly likely to play, is he? We've only got domestic football. It's not like we need a heavily rotated squad. And I don't see where he would get game time, so he's not going to go to the World Cup then. So he needs to make a decision, really. But I would, you know, give him the options and see what we can do. But I like the idea of us maybe getting a little bit firmer with our asking prices as well. If that story is to be believed. But give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below. Now, there's been some really big updates regarding Sancho. So, Jadon Sancho's agent is in Turin. The deal is for 15 million euros, with Juventus having pledged a severance payment from United. A medical is possible by the end of the week. Now, that came from a journalist that's close to Juventus, suggesting that Sancho's agent is in Turin and a deal for 15 million euros, with Juventus having pledged a severance payment from United. So, again, going back to this severance pay as well, potentially we might have to pay off some of his contract for him to go. A medical is possible by the end of the week. Then we've had Alfredo Padula say that Manchester United and Juventus want to finalise the Jadon Sancho deal as soon as possible, preferably in the next 24 hours. The player only wants to join Juve. So Alfredo Padula saying that this deal could potentially be close, but we'll have to wait and see, because I think Alfredo Padula can be a little bit hit and miss sometimes. Di Marzio was saying that Juventus are very close to signing Jadon Sancho. Positive contacts were made this evening with the player's agent and with Manchester United, so that's positive. The rumours and the reports regarding Jadon Sancho to Juventus, according to Di Marzio, an Italian journalist, potentially could be close. Nico, though, who I actually think is a good source, is probably the most reliable out of the ones just mentioned there, in my opinion, said that Jadon Sancho is one step away to Juventus from Manchester United. Agreed personal terms between the winger and Juve, which are in advanced and which are in advanced talks with Manchester United to try to reach an agreement. So there could be some positive news regarding this. It feels a little bit like this might be plausible. I would still want to see a bit more credibility, because a lot of the reports are coming from Italian media and Italian journalists, but doesn't mean they're wrong. Nico's a good source. I think it was spot on in the January window when it was coming to all the Garnacho and Napoli links and news as well. I think it was actually the first journalist, correct me if I'm wrong, that reported that dismissed the Xerxes going back to Italy rumours as well that were going around in January or before January, if you remember that. So he's a decent journalist. So one step away from Juventus. So hopefully we can see a conclusion to this deal, you know, soon, because that might then free up the money for us to finally get Mbeumo done over the line, or could give us some funds to go for Martinez if those links are true, or for Tolisso. You know, like it could be, you know, the catalyst to maybe get one or two deals done. And so the quicker we can get an exit, then the hopefully the better it will be for us. If the deal doesn't go through, though, Turkish journalist who is, you know, a very credible source, saying that if Sancho can't find a team in Europe's top 5 leagues, he will turn to signing for a team in Turkey. He is demanding a £13 million salary from Turkish side. Besiktas is not willing to pay this. So if he doesn't get a move to Italy or one of the top 5 leagues, then Sancho would probably would reluctantly go to play in Turkey, but would demand a £13 million salary a year from Turkish teams. Oh my God. And then Inter have Jadon Sancho on their list of alternatives to Ademola Lookman. That came from Di Marzio again. And so Inter are in talks and with Lookman trying to get that deal done, but potentially could be a possible option should that deal fall through. But the reports are looking very likely with Juventus. But again, I would want to see a bit more credibility, because we'll probably have Romano this afternoon or the time I'm uploading this video, because that's what normally happens when some news will break that, yeah, it's not happening or something of that nature. So I'd want to wait and see a bit more credibility personally. But it is looking positive, I would say, going off of those reports. Interestingly, though, Di Marzio said that Jadon Sancho's move to Juventus is edging closer, and the club are also keeping an eye on Marcus Rashford as a potential attacking option. I mean, would Juventus really want the you know, want the freedom duo. Possibly. I mean, possibly that's not a bad shout. But the problem with Rashford is he wants to go to Barcelona. He's waiting for Barcelona. Barcelona are no closer to making a move by all accounts. However, Christopher Michel, who's a good journalist, said that will Man United and Marcus Rashford part ways this summer, there may be a solution before the US trip. FC Barcelona is still very interested in a transfer for the attacker. So Christopher Michel suggesting that maybe there could be also some movement with Rashford, but I'm not really hearing too much around that. But that doesn't mean things aren't going on behind the scenes regarding him. So we'll have to wait and see how that one plays out. But give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below. There's been some news coming out at the time of recording this video from The Athletic regarding, I think it's regarding some of the youth players, where he's saying that Ruben Amorim is evaluating Diego Leon to determine if he remains with the first team or moves to the under-21. He's not going on loan and will stay to adapt to English football. Seko Kone's level is being assessed before a decision is made on whether he will contribute more often at a first-team level. A loan or a season spent in the 21s are both still options. So it's just talking about the youth team as well. But that's interesting that Seko Kone might still be with the 21s, or they're going to do a loan. But interestingly, that Diego Leon's not going to go out on loan as well, according to The Athletic. That's just come out at the time of recording this video. So that's you all up to date with the latest news and transfer updates. Don't forget to smash a like on the video anyway. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. See you in the next one.